Hi, I'm Brian, welcome to Autogefühl, and welcome to the Porsche Boxster 718 GTS. Now, regular viewers might be thinking, hang on a second, didn't we see Thomas already do a full review of this car? The answer is yes, but that was before the Porsche driving team gave us a call and asked us if we'd like to come just close to Cologne to try it out. What's closer to Cologne? Well, I can already hear a few of you shouting at your screens. It is, of course, the world-renowned Nordschleife, and we're going to have the opportunity today to not only try it out on the roads around the area, but of course, on the famous track itself. Oh my God, this racing course is just fabulous. Traditionally, the Boxster has split a lot of opinions. Now, partly that's because the styling has made a lot of people think that it's really a softer version of a Porsche and doesn't have the aggressive sporty drive. But more recently, it's because of the four-cylinder presentation that gives it its 718 badge. Now, a lot of people are still mad at Porsche for taking those two cylinders away, but I can promise you that they haven't driven it with the 4 setup. It's fantastic. But how does that all relate to the way that the car presents? Well, I can tell you it's a mid-engine and it's rear-wheel drive. And that means that we have a lot of very cleverly located space on this that made Jonas and I laugh more than a little bit while we were trying to figure out where to put all of his camera equipment. What we're going to do today is take a closer look at this car and see how you can get the best out of driving it in any conditions. But we also really want to show you just what this car is capable of. Believe me, if you think the Boxster is a tamer, less wild Porsche, you're in for a real treat and a bit of a surprise. A lot of people ask with the GTS, could I not just spec up a regular one and arrive at more or less the same thing with a little bit less pain on the pricing? The answer is no, not quite, because you do get a lot for that extra money that you spend. And the styling is only the least of that. But I have to say, I really like what Porsche have done with this car to bring that slightly more aggressive drive home to you when you look at it. These wheels are absolutely a fantastic way of showing off the nice contrast between this lovely classic red color and the sporty addition of the GTS. Coming slightly further back on the car, I really like these air intakes. They're subtle but obviously crucial. Being a mid-mount engine, we need to make sure that that airflow is as effective as possible to make sure that we get the maximum out of it. Now, it has been a bit of a change in recent years that we are used to a more traditional naturally aspirated, I knew I was going to do that, engine. But now, of course, we have the turbo. I am very pleased to tell you it has been beautifully integrated into the way that this car drives. So if you're anyway nervous about that switchover having taken place, don't worry, it's still just as much fun. Round at the back, we can see how a lot of those styling details that tell us that it is a GTS have been continued through. Now, some of you may be wondering, well, what's the point of the Boxster over the Cayman? Well, it's really very simple. Do you want to have a hardtop or not? Now, if you're a driving purist, I can absolutely see why you're going to want to go with a hardtop. But for me, well, look at the weather today. This car is a delight with the top down. So if you want to have that flexibility, and really one of the most pleasing things about our experience here has been how well made that soft top is. Even driving around the Nordschleife at full speed you still don't get an extraordinary amount of road noise, and the tuning on the engine is really great to listen to. I've been fascinated by how many of the drivers here have absolutely no interest in the exhaust button that gives you a little bit more noise. The engine sounds great all by itself, and if you do go with the soft top, you get just a little bit more of that sound while you're driving. Now, further down with the car, we can see this really nice logo telling us exactly what it is we have, and these really beautifully finished exhaust pipes right in the middle. This is a car that it's fantastic to sit on the inside of, in front of it, or in the back eating its dust. Talking about that roof, it really is very straightforward and simple to use. If I just pull on this here, you can see there's not really a lot of work and effort required. Now, I think it's fair to point out that is certainly not the fastest roof in the business. But come on, do you really need it to be any faster than that? And as for your ability to need to use it while driving, well, I think that's a little bit of a gimmick too. I think I have more than enough time for this to happen when I want a little bit more light in my life. Now, common complaint about soft tops is, doesn't that kill all of the storage? Surely there is literally nowhere to put anything in this car. One of the most fun aspects of Porsches traditionally is because of their engine mounting, they had almost nowhere to put anything. Well, obviously that's changed. The modern world says that we travel with an awful lot of stuff and it needs somewhere to go. But you have to admit, you must be a little bit intrigued. What's the trick to it? After all, we have a mid-engine mount, we have a soft top. Surely there can't be that much space to put anything. Well, this is the back storage area, and look at that. It's really not bad at all. This is Jonah's camera bag, and to give you a sense of proportion, you can see here, we've actually got a pretty decent load space back here. Now, brilliantly, it's not the only place you have spare to put things in this car. There's also a storage well up at the front. Let's go take a quick look at that. This one's a little bit more of a trick to open. The answer's fairly straightforward as to why. What you don't want is to accidentally open this and have it fly up in your face while you're driving along. Look at that. Now, hopefully we'll be coming to a little bit more of this later on, but I can tell you in the meantime, this is 150 litres of load space. And with the rear, which adds an extra 125, you really do have plenty enough space in this car for a really, really nice weekend getaway. What do you think, Jonas? Shall we go? As we often do, we're going to start with the key, and in case you haven't seen one before, you may just be noticing how rather like a Porsche that looks. Come on, that's kind of cool, isn't it? Now, if you are aware, climbing in and out of one of these bucket seats can be a little bit tricky for, shall we say, a larger gentleman, but I learned there's a trick to that. You just slide the seat back, and actually, it's really pretty straightforward, especially with the top down, so this might be a clue as to why I like it quite as much as I do. So when you sit inside, what do you get from the experience? Well, first off, these sport seats are really, really nice. They fit you very comfortably. As you can all see, I am not the smallest guy in the world, but I can tell you I've put a fair few hours into driving in this car, and I've never had a single back problem or any element of discomfort. Now, that said, getting in and out every day, if you have to get in and out 15 times in the morning, does get a little bit old, but trust me, when you start driving the car, it's a long gone memory. To the styling itself, as you can see, we have a fairly conservative laid-back design here. I really like this red rev counter in the middle. I really like the way that it's featured as being the prominent piece of information that you, the driver, need. And the infotainment display here is really subtle too. Everything about this car is focusing you on its driving experience and really nothing else. Now that said, the technology has been nicely integrated into the design. So for example, of the 3 dials here, the one on the right is a digital display. Now I'll show you that if we just switch the car on. You can see that we can change this display in order to give us any of the information that we really want to be looking at while driving. But because of the engine, you're going to be spending most of the time listening to how the car's performing and paying attention to the road. I think Porsche understand this, and that's why we're really not getting carried away with any infotainment system in here. That said, it's nicely executed and it just adds to your overall experience. So as far as the design is concerned, aesthetically it's really pleasing. If you like Alcantara or soft touch materials, you are going to be very happy with this car because there is acres of the stuff throughout. Now, the steering wheel has divided some opinion in the past. Some people have said, well, I don't know how I would feel if my hands got a little bit hotter or I'm driving in a warm climate. What I can tell you is it provides excellent grip and it really helps your tactile feedback while you're driving. I really like the way these ports are integrated into the dash, and this analog clock up here is a nice throwback to the past. The only thing about the entire cockpit that I'm not in love with, and I think could have been done a little bit better, is this. It's very, very plastic. And as I'm going to be touching this an awful lot while I'm driving around, I just wish it could have been a little bit more of a solid material, especially when you contrast it with how well executed these paddles are. They feel great, and so they should. You're going to want to spend an awful lot of time driving this car using that functionality. Now, as far as the rest of the features go, I think you could say it's fairly sparse, and that will come as no surprise. The focus is all on the drive. If I actually switch the car on, we will see if we can hear that lovely note as it starts up. Now, purists may tell you, that's quite not as much of a throaty growl as I would like. And for that reason, Porsche have included this button here. And this changes the exhaust note. Honestly, I didn't really need it. I think the car sounds great without it. But it's nice to have the option, and if you're one of those guys, and I know Jonas is, who likes to go through tunnels and really listen to the reverb coming back off the sound of the gear change, well then that's going to make the most of it for you. Seating position's great, road position is great, the car is really nicely proportioned around you so you know exactly where you're sitting within it and exactly where it sits within the road. The seating position does put you very close to the center of gravity in this car, and that's wonderful for the handling because combined with the responsiveness of the brakes and the steering, you immediately feel that you're exactly where you need to be within the vehicle to get the most out of the drive. I couldn't really say anything negative about the experience of sitting in this car as a sports car. Yes, the heating and cooling controls are a little bit fiddly and messy, but look, we have the biggest heating and cooling control that we need right above our heads anyway, so I don't think there's any point getting upset about that. Gear stick is really nice, very easy and straightforward to use. We don't have a reversing camera. Come on, I don't think we need a reversing camera. The all-around visibility is great in any case, so you're more than capable of finding out where you are and what you're doing. This car is nicely loaded, so we do have heated seats optional fitted here. And coming further down, when we get to the slightly more important stuff, we can see that we can adjust the suspension, we can take traction control off, we have automatic stop-start on the engine. Bit of a curious one for me, I have to tell you. Automatic stop-start is really nice when it's well integrated. But unless I'm spending an awful lot of time driving this car around London, I just don't know how bothered I am about the idea of the engine keeping switching itself off. It does detract a little bit from the enjoyment, so I've had that mostly off the entire time we've had it. This button here is for additional lowering of the suspension. I apologize, this button here actually is for the diffuser at the back. I'm still on this button in my head. Now, we have the Synchro package here, so as far as driving modes go, we have standard everyday, sports, sports plus, and individual. So you can do quite a lot of tailoring of the experience. One of the first things that the instructor told us when we went out on the track this morning is, please don't bother about trying to remove all of the car's functionality. The engineers have done a fantastic job of delivering a driving experience to you without needing to mess around with it. And I have to tell you, in my experience, that's 100% true. Now, those driving modes do make the most of the suspension. We have an extended drop for the GTS model here, which makes us lower and closer to the road. It also means that the ride is a little bit more bumpy, but without the extra additional suspension lowering switched on, you really wouldn't notice it. We've driven over some pretty rough stuff and it was all quite comfortable. Even with it as low as it possibly goes in Sports Plus, it still presents a remarkably comfortable ride. But for everyday use, there's just no need for that. And I have to tell you, even around the racetrack, mostly I found that Sports was more than enough, and it was surprisingly comfortable. So come on, this is an awful lot of talking about driving this car around a racetrack. I think it's about time we took it out there and had a look, don't you? So now it's time to find out what the 718 can deliver once we get it on the Nordschleife. Now, if you're like me, you will not have driven on this track before, but you will have spent many, many happy hours watching other people doing it. So I'm more than a little bit excited to get out here and try the track as much as I am the car. So our Porsche comes with the Sports Chrono package, and that means not only do we have all the standard fun and excitement, but we also have the ability to lower that suspension just a little bit further, and we get the Sports Plus feature on the driving mode selector. So we're going to take a good look at that and see what that can deliver. We have 265 horsepower delivered to us through a 2.5 litre flat 4 engine. And okay, a lot of people are sad that it's now a 4, not 6 cylinder, but honestly, I don't think that's going to make any difference to the drive whatsoever. We are going to get the chance to find out. The 718 gives us a top speed of 290 kilometers per hour and does 0 to 100 in just 4.3 seconds. Yeah, okay, it's not the fastest car you've ever driven, but you know what? This car is all about the drive, so it's the precision of the way in which that power is delivered and the handling of the car. And the Nordschleife is certainly the track to take it to find out all about that. Well, we're waiting on the starting grid to get the all clear to go. I'm pretty excited. Jonas, you feeling okay?
Yeah.
Now, Jonas coming to you a little bit muffled today. The reason for this is he is, for safety, wearing a crash helmet and a face mask. You might wonder why I'm not. Well, ordinarily they would insist on it, but as I'm always telling you, I have a very long torso. So the 718 does not permit me with enough headspace to wear the helmet safely. And because of that, we are behind a safety instructor on the track who makes sure that everything we do is okay. This is the only reason I do not have to wear a crash helmet today. Now, our instructor is Anja. Oh, I knew this was going to be fun to pronounce. Anja Vossa-Teurer. Is that okay?
It's okay.
Excellent. She is one of the best people here today to be behind. She has 13 years of Nordschleife driving experience and has competed in the 24-hour race here 10 times. Now, I asked her earlier on today if she felt she could drive this track blindfolded. She said she was fairly certain she could. I don't think she's going to give us the chance to see that today. But even after having spent a little bit of time watching her driving, I can tell you she certainly knows this track back to front. And that's really important here. I don't know what your experience is of the Nordschleife, but I can tell you it is one of...
Keep you on the phone, Brian. We will be...
We're just waiting for our position to be able to start. And I can tell you, I don't know what your experience is of the Nordschleife, but it is one of the longest tracks anywhere that you can drive. One of the best things about this track, anyone can book in and turn up here with their car, which is why there are so many great videos online. But you cannot believe some of the vehicles that people will bring here to try out. Now, nicely for us, this is only a driver experience day, so the people on the track are predominantly journalists, but there are also a lot of private owners with very high performance cars. So we are not going to be held up on our track at all. There is an awful lot of very nice car here at the Nordschleife today. I can recommend for you, if you ever get the chance, only just to come down and watch, it's well worth the trip. Anything you like to look at, anything you'd like to drive, somebody is here on this track finding out just how fast it will go. And today, that's us in the 718, and hopefully it's going to be a blast. And we're off. So the first thing to note is that we are going to start our drive in standard drive mode. We want to see how the car performs and how it sounds when we're not using any of its fancy bells and whistles. First thing to tell you about the drive in this car once you get on the track, clearly you have a little bit more freedom to follow your line rather than just being constrained to where you're legally supposed to be going, is that the handling really is effortless. Now, our driving instructor was kind enough to give me a few pointers earlier, and she told me the important thing to know about driving the Nordschleife is that the course really does want you to go where you should be driving on your natural line anyway, and that's helpful information to have. But one of the first things you notice about this car, once you start having a little bit more speed to it, is just how refined the balance is. That mid-engine and your position low within the vehicle really does put you right at the center of gravity here. And what that relates to is it means that your ability to pull off quickly from early braking on a corner is really, really fast. Now, the GTS delivers to you not only differential lock, this is rear wheel drive, but it also features torque vectoring. What that means is we get a little bit of inside braking, and that allows us to turn corners just that little bit more crisply. How that translates, how that all comes together, is that for a rear wheel drive car, this has a fantastic amount of precision and poise. Now, of course, torque vectoring does relate to more wear and tear on those brakes, and I can recommend to you that if you are thinking of buying one of these and doing lots of track days on it, you are going to want to go with ceramics on the brakes, because I'm told if you go with standard brakes, you're going to want to change them about every 5 track days, and that's an awful lot of money to need to spend on a car. Now, if you've got the cash, who cares? But if you want to go with the longest life that you can get out of it, then go with the ceramics. They're worth spending the extra cash on. So how about the Sports Chrono package? Well, obviously this is a warm-up lap, so we're not taking the car too hard or pushing it too fast. But there's plenty enough noise, especially with this lovely soft top, to give me a really good feeling about what the engine and the gearbox are delivering. Both are working in beautiful harmony, the car is great to drive, and everything is handling just the way it should. But I would say that we're not going quite fast enough yet. So let's have a talk about the driving position. Well, obviously this is a driver's car, so you don't have a huge amount of ability to adjust the seat beyond making it go forwards and backwards. It's carbon fiber, and what that means is that it's entirely focused on the weight that it delivers to you while you're driving. So when you're using it for everyday use, popping down the shops, clearly it's not going to be the most comfortable to get in and out of. But once you're on the racetrack, these seats make 100% perfect sense. They hold you exactly where you need to be, and they are surprisingly comfortable. Now, we've started to pile on the speed a little bit here, so we get more of a sense of just how this car drives. And what I can tell you is, for a rear-wheel drive car, it's remarkable. You have to keep pinching yourself into these bends to remind yourself that it is rear-wheel drive. That mid-mounted even engine and that torque vectoring really do allow you to feel the perfect balance, and you actually feel like you're either experiencing all-wheel drive or front-wheel drive. But that is the beauty of the sports pack, and I have to tell you that I haven't felt any need yet to change the driving mode. So I think now might be a really good time to find out what happens if I put it in sports. Okay, well, the first thing that will occur to you is that the engine note has changed, and the reason for that is one of the preset values on the sports feature of this car is the change of the exhaust note. Now, I'm not a huge fan of that. I'm perfectly happy with the way that the engine sounds naturally, and I don't really need it enhanced in any way, shape or form. But the driving dynamic of this car has now changed. I feel happier going at these faster speeds, and I feel more in control of the car. What are you telling me, Jonas? Oh, yours. I thought Jonas is trying to tell me something really vitally important. Looks a little bit like he's having a stroke, but he's actually just enhancing the suction on the camera mount to make sure it doesn't come off while we're driving. So what does the sports mode do? Well, we've changed the chassis driving dynamic. We've also dropped the suspension, so the ride is a little bit firmer. The acceleration's a little bit brisker, and the handling's a little bit tauter. All of that adds up to making the car feel ready for more speed. It really does make you feel more sure and certain on the track. Now, standard driving mode is great, and to be honest, you're not going to need a lot more than that for 90% of the time that you have this car. But when you want to go fast, that sports mode really delivers. See that coming out of these turns and applying some acceleration really does give you a fantastic feeling. This car is all about balance and poise. It's not the fastest car in the world, but it is extraordinarily fun to drive. Just a word about driving on the Nordschleife. In many ways, it's a magnificent slice of history. As a journalist, you get to drive on a lot of tracks of massively varying quality, but this is the only place I can think of where you get such a fantastic mix of the old and the new. Now, you saw how that was. That's a camber bend that I particularly wanted to show you. The reason for that is you're not going to find that on many modern racetracks. It's really bumpy, really rough and ready. We don't have huge runoff areas on this track. We just have a beautiful, extensive piece of black tarmac snaking its way through these trees here. It all feels like you are driving through a wonderful piece of history. All in all, the experience is absolutely superb, and I can't help but ask myself where else you can get this experience. Sure, Spa is a fantastic track and really delivers a huge amount of imagination and excitement, but for pure magic, history, and a little bit of romance thrown in, for me, it's the Nordschleife every single time. There are lots of very famous parts on this track, but this is one of the best known in the modern era. This bend has the nickname YouTube Corner, and the reason for this is that more journalists trying to show how great their skills are have come a cropper on that bend than anywhere else on the track. And for that reason, they have huge parking areas next to it where people can come every day and watch for free, only to see what the amateurs and professionals can achieve while they're driving around this track. Now, it's a weekday today, so we don't have huge crowds of people trying to find out what they can capture on video, but we still have a few hardcore fans there filming everything that happens, and it all just adds to the excitement of the experience overall. So that's the sports mode. Well, let's talk about the sports chrono pack. Is it worth spending the extra money on? Well, there's really only one way to find out. Let's switch it on and see what we think. Well, the first thing to note is that our suspension has gone to its lowest possible setting. We also have that enhanced noise. I've switched that off. Again, especially with the soft top, I don't see any need for that. If you can describe the sports mode as being the best compromise in this car between a comfortable standard ride and a sports, agile type driving experience, Sports Plus is where we say you can forget comfort. I have absolutely no interest in your experience of the driver of this car in anything other than needing to feel the raw power and performance that you can expect and hope for. Well, I say that, but the ride actually isn't uncomfortable. I mean, clearly a racetrack is not a rough driving experience to begin with, but why on earth would you use Sports Plus anywhere that was? So, in terms of what it delivers for our driving experience on this car, it is absolutely the maximum that this car is capable of. The amount of downforce that you now experience with that increased drop is fantastic. It means that when you do poke yourself into a corner, you really do feel that you're glued to the track here. Accelerating out of a bend, it's just pure exhilaration. And once you start getting through corners on this car, while you're accelerating, oh, it's absolutely lovely. Well, that's the driving experience, but I am somewhat sensitive to the fact that I've got Jonas on board here. Jonas, how is this feeling as a passenger?
Yeah, it's fun, it's okay.
That's not comfortable. Quite comfortable is not bad. I may tell you, Jonas has a stronger constitution than I do. I took a lap here as a passenger earlier just to see what the feeling was like, and I missed having the steering wheel very much. But anyway, I don't have to concern myself with that right now because it's all about the drive. So, sports chrono, do you need it? Well, I have to tell you, I know it sounds a little bit silly, but I really do think I would miss that lovely clock in the center of the dashboard if I hadn't splashed out the extra. Really, for everyday use, there is no necessity to go with the sports chrono pack. Why? Well, I'm only starting to scratch the surface of what this delivers now here on the Nordschleife. And I can tell you, there is no possibility for you to make the maximum return of this on standard roads. Even in Germany on the Autobahn, where you have some places unlimited speed, you certainly cannot drive a car like this. So I really don't think there's anything about the standard sports drive on this car that leaves you wanting more in everyday, day-to-day driving circumstances. But if you do have an urge to bring your car for a track day, then go for it. You're going to want to see exactly what this car is capable of achieving, and I can tell you that is an awful lot. The Boxster can come not only as an automatic, but let's not forget there is a manual version. But I'm not sensing a huge amount of need for that. The delivery on the automatic is so crisp. Don't forget, with the paddles, if you like the feeling of control that choosing your own gear gives you, and around the Nordschleife that certainly is fun. I should tell you I'm in full automatic at the moment just in order to be able to do this moderation. There is really no need to worry about a lack of fun. This gearbox is so efficient, it also means that you have a faster 0 to 100 time. And in this car, that's really beneficial. So I can highly recommend this automatic gearbox. It is excellent and absolutely adds to your enjoyment of the driving experience. Yeah, I'm a bit of a purist and I'll always take a manual wherever I'm given the choice. But in this car, it just makes the experience so great, and I honestly don't miss it at all. Now, I'm going to go on a little bit more about that mid-mounted engine. It delivers a weight distribution that is just sublime, and that's with 2 passengers. Come on guys, let's be honest. I am not the smallest or lightest guy in the world, but the car makes everything feel nimble and precise. Watch this, we're going to turn in for this bend, and then we're going to pour on a little bit of power as we come out. Look how quickly and how precisely I get out of a brake and straight into the power again coming up this hill. That's fantastic. I never have any sense whatsoever that the car is running away from me. It's only ever kept completely in control. And once again, let's remind ourselves, this is a rear-wheel drive car. Fabulous. If you haven't driven one yet, find a racetrack near you, take it out, give it a spin. We've been joined by Anja Saeed, who has been putting her 13 years of Nordschleife experience to the test, trying to help me to understand a little bit more about how to drive it properly. Anja, was it a complete waste of your day?
Absolutely not. The last lap I really think was a great one. You used the track, you did the right steering. There were some corners where I've seen you're not so comfortable with, but of course it was 6th lap or something, so it was great.
Ha, Thomas, in your face. And Jonas kept his lunch as well, so it was not all bad. So, Anja, we have been brought here in order to see how the 718 may perform on the track. And of course, we now have the GTS, a little bit special, a little different. What is the difference between driving this car and its standard brother, the standard one?
To be honest, even the standard cars from Porsche, you know, that are very drivable even on tracks. But the GTS, what the letters say, they are specially made for sporty driving, for track experiences. So a little bit more to the dot on every single little point, like with the setup, with the steering. So the engine is a little bit stronger, so you can really take it to the max. And of course, it's a mid-engine car, which is always great. And it's a pretty light car, which is even better.
Now, you know what I want to know? We were not allowed today to drive around the Nordschleife with the top down. Bit of a shame for me. But the big question we're going to be asked is, come on, this or the Cayman? Which way are you going to go?
Actually, I would go take the direction into the Boxster, because you have the best of 2 cars combined in one. You can use it like a coupe on track, but you can take the top down whenever you feel like cruising through the landscapes and winding road, and that's really something to experience.
Now, for whatever reason, I don't fully understand it, these crazy people at the Nordschleife allow any lunatic, more or less, with any car to come here and drive it. Can you offer our viewers any advice at all if they really think, yes, you know, I want to come here, I want to try this? Can you offer them some tips about what they should look out to get out of here with both their cars and themselves intact?
Actually, it's always being a little bit keep the respect of the track, because it's not an easy one. You have blind corners, you're coming uphill, you don't know, is it a fast corner or is it a slow one? We once had in our team Jari-Matti Latvala, the rally driver, and he came back with a wrecked car. And he told us, oh, I thought it was 5th gear corner, but it was 3rd. And something like this happens if you don't know the track good enough. So take it easy, take it lightly, go up there, check out the track first, and your car first, and your abilities, and then slowly going faster. That's it.
Now, if it turns out that you're really quite proficient at driving the track after giving it a few tries, you might be excited about the idea of trying the 24-hour race here, and Anya has done that 10 times. So it seems to me it's quite a challenging track as it is. What on earth possesses you to think you want to drive this when it's pitch black?
Actually, the race is that long. It seems to be exciting to drive 24 hours in a row. It is exciting from the technical standpoint too, because the cars have to do it. And it's so much fun to go in there in the night, and you see the fans on the outside, and you see the burning fires, the fireplaces, you smell how they fry their steaks and everything, and they pull up like fireworks into the air. It's just gorgeous. You should experience it once, but yeah, it's a little bit lunatic.
But you were telling me earlier it's changed a little bit from the glory days. Now we have a maximum number of 140 on the track, is it? But you have driven with how many people in this race?
Actually, it was the track capacity was 210 cars at the time when I was driving for the race. In practice, 240 cars were allowed on track, and then limited down to 210 on account of the lap time they were driving.
I think now you start to really get an idea of why there are so many exciting Nordschleife videos available that you can watch online. Anya, I have one last question for you. It's been so much fun driving with you here today, but come on, you have the pick of any car that you can take out from Porsche's lineup. And I think I already know the answer to this. What's your car? What is the one you want to drive around this track?
Actually, there are a lot of fun cars that we have, like for example the GT3 to drive around here, but what I always admire so much is the Turbo S, the coupe, because you have so much power with the engine. It's a completely everyday car. You can drive it very comfortably on the road, but take it to this track and it might be a real beast, but still very controllable for the four-wheel drive. So I really love the car on track. It's great.
Anya, it has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to show us around the track and the car. And who knows, maybe someday you'll have the chance to meet up with Anya and have a little taste for the Nordschleife all for yourself. So we thought we'd bring you outside of the Nürburgring into the countryside to show you how lovely this area is, but also how you can expect this car to handle in everyday use. Well, the roads around here have some very low speed limits, so it's not going to be all about speed, but it might surprise you to learn that's actually a really good way to show you what this car can achieve for you when you're actually out and about using it. Jonas tells me that as much as motor enthusiasts have loved coming here for years only to have their opportunity to see driving at its most fun, the police come here in their mass numbers for years also to experience their greatest fun, which is arresting people for breaking the speed limit. So you're certainly not going to be able to get your track experience, except for that guy, off the track without risking your driving license. So why would we bring the car here to show you how it drives? Well, my favorite feature of this car is the way in which it handles. And we have a couple of bends just up this road that I really want to show you. For me, they demonstrate how you can have immense fun driving this car, even at slower legal speeds. So here we are. We're coming round into a lovely S-bend just down this hill, and you can really get a sense of the traction that this car has to offer. There's nothing fancy about the mode I'm in. I'm not in sports mode. Here we go. Look at that. So poised, so precise, so completely in control, and the second I'm round the bend, it's ready for me to pour on the power if I was able to. I'm not, but my point remains the same. You can have so much fun driving this car within the speed limits wherever you live. And that for me is really a very impressive achievement. Well, those were two lovely bends coming down. Let's see how the car takes them going up. Again, standard mode, suspension fully set for comfort, nothing fancy about the drive at all. Just me in the car having a lovely, nice drive out in a warm, sunny autumn afternoon. Brake lightly coming into this bend and turn in. Let's give it a bit of power. See how quickly and responsively the car gives me back control. And don't forget, it's rear-wheel drive. No kick out at all. Look at that. Effortless. Did you hear any noise at all from the wheels? There was none. That's not because I'm the world's best driver, that's because the car does such a fantastic job of making sure the power is exactly where it needs to be. And if you've driven one of these before, the new edition of torque vectoring is really something to experience. Jonas and I spent a lot of time deciding where to film this conclusion, and we decided that this was the perfect spot, but I'll tell you why in just a minute. If you haven't had the chance to visit the Nordschleife, you probably won't know. Usually you pay by the lap. This is for anyone turning up with their car. And it costs you around about €25 a go. So if you're feeling brave and comfortable with all the other crazy drivers on the course, you can have an absolutely fantastic day out here for about €200. But to be completely honest with you, if you buy a performance car, I completely recommend that you spend a lot more and get some personal time with an instructor. You might be immensely experienced at driving a car, but you are not a race driver. And when you spend time with somebody who is, you really get to understand that how they think is just a little bit different. Now, if you do visit the Nordschleife, what you're likely to see is more types of every single manufacturer than you could ever possibly imagine. But the most common car that I've seen in the time I've been here is the GT3, and there is a very good reason for that. Earlier on, we were able to borrow, I say that carefully, our instructor's car, and we took it out for a ride. And wow, is that a different experience to the 718. Now, some things to consider there. Firstly, it has been set up specifically to be used at the Nordschleife and by a professional racing driver, so you'd expect it to handle a little differently. But for me, it best exemplifies the difference between a professional driver's car and just a nice sporty car. So what do I mean by that? Well, you take the GT3 out, the very first thing you'll notice is the weight of the steering. It's very heavy. Then you notice the brakes. You really have to put some muscle into making those things work. And the raw power. It's funny, Annie told me earlier that I might not be so keen of 3000 revs resonance, and I know exactly what she means. That's the point at which the engine really starts working the body hard. That is a car specifically designed for the professional driver. So now I come on to why we're sitting here. This car represents a fabulous compromise. To my way of thinking, any car you ever buy is going to be a compromise in one respect or another. The 718 is fantastically sporty, but it's also beautifully positioned to make the most of a really nice day out, just enjoying driving, staying within the speed limit and making the most of the opportunities that this car presents. Now, in terms of the should I go with this or the Cayman question, well, I think you guys already know my answer. Come on, if you want a serious driver's car, a really serious driver's car, and that's all you want to do with it, take a good look at the GT3 before you do anything else. If you want to make the most of a car that will delight you for everyday use as much as one that you get those rare occasions to take it out on the track, for me, this is your pick. Now, it isn't cheap. Once you've priced it up and added everything that you might want all in, it's going to come to around about €80,000. Ouch, that's a fair bit of money, but you do get an awful lot of car for that. And the nice thing with the way that this car works is you will have just as much fun driving it around country roads, dare I say it, as you could on the rare occasions you take it out on the racetrack. So, an awful lot of car for your money. Downsides? Well, I only really found one thing that I particularly didn't like about this car, and that's the automatic stop-start. Half of the experience of driving a sporty car is in the noise that it makes. And when you stand stationary with that car and listen to the sweet note from the engine, that really is part of the whole experience. Having it keep cut out and cut in, well, unfortunately it automatically selects by default every time you switch the car on. So you do spend an awful lot of time switching it off in our experience, but it does make it more efficient not to do that. And talking of efficiency, well, you really don't have any business buying one of these unless you can afford to run it. And I can tell you, standard usage for this car came in at 14 litres per 100 kilometres driven. Track use? A little bit more at 25 litres. So it certainly isn't a cheap hobby, but it is an awful lot of fun. If you have any comments or questions that we haven't covered today, then please pop them below. We hope you've enjoyed watching. We hope we'll see you again soon. And that's it from us for today.